need to balance your blood sugar, calm inflammation, or trying to lose weight, or just cut out sugar for your health, finding the best sugar substitute is going to be a really crucial thing to keep you on track. So, today we're talking about different sugar substitutes and how to choose the best one based on your health goals. Hey, it's Laura with TrueWell, and one of the first things that we do when shifting into an anti-inflammatory diet is cutting out sugar. This is because sugar drives inflammation and blood sugar spikes, and both of these things lead to insulin resistance. The problem with going sugar-free is that there are so many different alternatives, and marketing by the companies that make them can create a lot of confusion about what the best options might be. So today we're going to cover natural sweeteners, artificial sweeteners, and sugar-free natural sweeteners. And then we're going to talk about which would be your best option in going sugar-free that will help you reach your health goals. So let's start out with natural sweeteners. So when it comes to sugar substitutes that are considered natural, these options usually come into play when people are looking for unrefined options other than regular sugar. These can include honey, pure maple syrup, coconut sugar, and agave. And these can be really popular ingredients used in the paleo diet, which is also an anti-inflammatory diet based on whole foods. The problem with these sweeteners is that they're still sugar. So for someone who needs precise blood sugar management and for reduction in chronic inflammation, getting rid of all added sugars, even those that are unrefined, is going to be really important. Another aspect to this is that there are a lot of people who do emotional eating and are hooked on sweets, and it's really easy to convince yourself that you can still eat those types of foods and recipes that use natural sugars just because it's unrefined. Keeping yourself stuck on those added sugars, even when they're natural and unrefined, is still keeping yourself locked in that emotional eating cycle. So my recommendation for these sweets is just to cut them out, especially when you're first trying to start a sugar-free diet. That way your body and brain can reset itself to not have cravings for it. If you find that you're in that spot where you feel like you just can't quit eating sugar and refined carbs, I'll have a link below this video to more resources on breaking free from emotional eating and sugar. So the next category is artificial sweeteners. And these are sweeteners that are created in a lab. They date back to the 70s, some are more recent. And the problems with these types of sweeteners is that they disrupt your gut bacteria, and some have been connected with certain types of cancers. The gut bacteria piece is really important because 70 to 80% of your immune system is in your gut. And your gut also produces about 95% of the serotonin in your body, which is one of the main neurotransmitters related to anxiety and depression. Gut bacteria also plays a really big role in insulin resistance and becomes really important for anyone with conditions like prediabetes, diabetes, PCOS, just to name a few, but anything that has to do with insulin resistance. Then other conditions like autoimmune conditions and other inflammatory conditions rely on gut health as well, because leaky gut allows proteins, toxins, and bacteria to get through that gut barrier, which causes inflammation and then just worsens those conditions. Now, some studies have also shown that eating artificial sweeteners can impair the body's ability to recognize when it truly needs insulin. So if your body is pumping out insulin when you don't need it, it's going to pull your blood sugar levels too low. Then the body tries to compensate for that. And so not only are you on a blood sugar roller coaster, but that additional insulin is telling your body to store fat. Now, you can recognize these sweeteners in a couple different ways. So when you go into a restaurant or a coffee shop, they are the pink, blue, and yellow packets. And the names for those are sucralose, which goes under the brand name Splenda for the most part, and those use the yellow packets. I think lately a lot of different packaged products are using Splenda in them, and they kind of rely on that brand name. So you'll see the package and it'll say with Splenda if they use that, but you just still need to check the ingredients list to make sure that that's what it's listing is sucralose, which is the generic name for that brand. The next ones are aspartame and acesulfame. Sometimes it's spelled ACEK. The K stands for potassium. And those are under the brand names NutraSweet or Equal and are in the blue packet. And then that third one is going to be saccharin, which goes under the brand name Sweet and Low, and it's usually in the pink packet. Now, I want you to know what the names of those are because so many sugar-free products are using these sweeteners in them. And once you recognize these names, then you'll know which of those foods and drinks to avoid. Before we move on, if you're getting value from this video, please hit that like button so that others can find this video that need information on the best sugar substitutes, and subscribe to TrueWell to get all things anti-inflammatory diet and lifestyle. Okay, so let's dive into the natural zero-calorie sweeteners. So the first is going to be stevia. Stevia is derived from the leaves of the stevia plant, and it's a popular natural sweetener known for its 0 calorie and zero glycemic impact. It's from 200 to 350 times sweeter than sugar, but it can have a bit of a bitter aftertaste. I personally don't mind it, but it can taste a lot like the aftertaste that a diet soft drink would have. And you can get stevia in liquid form, which usually has alcohol or glycerin as a base, or in the powdered form. The powdered form is where this gets a bit tricky because a really common powder base for this is dextrin, which is a sugar and is highly processed. So if you opt for powdered stevia, find one that is either mixed with erythritol, which I'll cover in just a minute, or in the pure powdered form. And I'll have links below of the brands that follow these guidelines that I recommend. So the second sweetener is monk fruit. And monk fruit is another sweetener that comes from a plant. It's from a fruit that's native to southern China. And monk fruit is about 100 to 200 times sweeter than sugar. Studies are showing that monk fruit has antioxidants that support reduced inflammation and anti-cancer properties. It is also a mild antihistamine, and the flavor of monk fruit is far less bitter than stevia, and monk fruit is actually great for baking. And it can also be found in liquid and powder form, but the powder form is often a blend with erythritol, which again, we're going to go over in just a second. And number 3 is allulose. So allulose is a newer sugar substitute that's found in some fruits and corn. It's only about 70% as sweet as sugar and has around only 10% of the calories of the same measurement of table sugar. Allulose bakes and freezes like sugar, but keep in mind that unless the package says it's a cup for cup equivalent to substitute for sugar, you may have to do some calculations to substitute it. Allulose does not have an impact on blood sugar. It can also be found in liquid, powder, and granulated forms, but remember that it does still have some calories, just not the same amount as sugar. And the next one is sugar alcohols. So sugar alcohols don't actually contain sugar or alcohol, but they are becoming more popular because they don't have the bitter aftertaste that other sugar substitutes do. They have only about half the calories of sugar, and they don't absorb well in the intestines, meaning that they don't contribute to the same amount of carbohydrates that sugar would in the same amount. The most popular types are erythritol and xylitol. Now, erythritol has gained attention in the last few years because it's being mixed with many other natural sugar substitutes. This helps with that flavor profile and the ability to measure it cup for cup as you would for sugar. Erythritol has kind of a cooling sensation besides tasting a lot like sugar, but it can cause stomach upset for people with GI issues. So xylitol is the other sugar alcohol that occurs naturally in many fruits and vegetables, but it's produced commercially from corn cob and birch bark. And the sweetness is similar to sugar, but contains 40% less calories than sugar and gives an extremely small blood glucose response. Aside from that, xylitol has been shown to have a lot of health benefits, including having anti-inflammatory effects, possibly preventing ear infections, and it's an amazing sweetener for gum and foods because it can help prevent tooth decay. And in recent years, it's being used in neti pots and nasal sprays because it can help break up mucus and has antimicrobial and antiviral properties. The downside to xylitol is that it can also cause GI disturbances, and it's extremely toxic to dogs. The other thing I want to point out about sugar alcohols is that they can still contribute to a little bit of your carb count. But when you see packages and they do this net carb thing where you have your total carbs, and then a lot of times they'll subtract out the fiber because that doesn't get absorbed like carbs. And then also they'll subtract the exact same amount of sugar alcohols. And according to the American Diabetes Association website, that's not the exact way to calculate that. So I think it's a little misleading whenever there are products out that have that calculation where they're subtracting the entire amount of the sugar alcohols from the total carbs to get that net carb amount, because it's not truly what they say that it is on the bottom. So what's the best option? So overall, before making recommendations, I want to emphasize that there's still a lot of research to be done on all of these alternatives. But from the studies that we have so far, I recommend, number one, staying away from the artificial sweeteners altogether. And again, those are your yellow, pink, and blue packets. And then those that we talked about that are associated with those packets, those brand names and the generic names. For the natural sweeteners like honey and maple syrup, I also recommend staying away from all of those as well because of the blood sugar spikes and the inflammation that those can still cause, because those are still sugar. And then in the natural sugar-free options, I have several recommendations on on this for how to choose. Number one is to taste experiment. So first, I'd recommend that you try a few and just experiment with the taste with adding them into different types of things. Like maybe you experiment with adding it to a pitcher of tea or your coffee, maybe a vinaigrette dressing, and then also try baking with it. Come at it from an experimental frame of mind. And also know that there are a ton of different options with the blends that they're making now. As long as you're not reacting with the GI issues to those sugar alcohols, that's what a lot of these are made of. This can help cut those unfavorable flavors, as well as making it a cup for cup substitution for regular sugar in recipes. The second factor I would recommend is choosing based on your conditions. So again, if you're dealing with a condition like IBS, IBD, or other GI condition, including leaky gut or autoimmune issues, sugar alcohol may not be the best option for you. You can always just try a little and see how it affects you and then go from there. And if you have allergies, monk fruit may be your best option. If you have frequent sinus infections or ear infections or oral infections, xylitol may be your best option. And then third, people choose based on cost. Some of these can be much more expensive than others. One trick that I use on this front is if I find something that's really expensive, but that I really like it, it gives me a little more incentive to kind of like wean myself back from it. And in the case of weaning off of sugar and sweets, this is a pretty good tactic to help with that. So check out all the links in the description below for more resources and where to find these. Let me know in the comments what other questions you have about going sugar-free. And also let me know what your favorite natural sugar substitute is. Be true, be well, and I'll see you in the next video.